The money moved in three directions: north to the cartels, east to the banks, south to the terrorists. A river of cash flowing from American streets to fund operations on three continents. Cocaine was the product, but the true currency was power, and the organization controlling this flow answered to Tehran. This is DEA Hunter, and this is the story of Operation Persian Gate. The first thread appeared in a routine financial investigation, a currency exchange business in Miami processing unusual volumes, cash deposits from dozens of sources, wire transfers to accounts in the Cayman Islands, Panama, and Lebanon. That single destination triggered immediate escalation. The name itself carried weight in counterterrorism circles. Lebanon had been the operational base for Hezbollah since the organization's founding in 1982. Every dollar reaching certain Lebanese financial institutions was potentially funding rocket attacks on Israeli cities, training camps in Syria, operations across the Middle East and beyond. DEA financial crimes analysts recognized the pattern immediately. The exchange business was structured identically to operations previously linked to Hezbollah's financial network. The Lebanese militant organization, designated as a terrorist group by the United States, had been documented using drug trafficking to fund operations for over 2 decades. The connection between narcotics and terrorism was not theoretical. It was documented, proven, and ongoing. But the scale of this operation exceeded anything previously documented on American soil. The Miami Exchange was processing approximately $14 million monthly, cash from cocaine distribution across the southeastern United States. The money flowed through a labyrinth of shell companies before reaching its final destinations. 40% moved to accounts controlled by Mexican cartel leadership. Payment for product. The cocaine originated in Venezuela, transited through Central America, and entered the United States through established cartel smuggling routes. 35% moved to financial institutions in West Africa, Ghana, Senegal, Guinea-Bissau. These were not endpoints. These were waypoints. The money continued moving east, eventually reaching banks in Beirut where Hezbollah's financial arm managed investments and disbursements. 25% moved directly to Lebanon through a network of hawaladars, traditional money transfer agents operating outside formal banking systems, untraceable, unregulated, perfect for terrorist financing. The DEA had stumbled onto something far larger than drug trafficking. This was a convergence of narcotics, organized crime, and international terrorism operating openly in American cities. What concerns you most about the intersection of drugs and terrorism? The funding it provides to hostile organizations, the state actors who benefit, or the American communities financing it unknowingly? Consider that question as this investigation unfolds. The Venezuelan connection required immediate attention. Venezuela had become the hemisphere's narco-state over the previous decade. Government officials at the highest levels were documented participants in cocaine trafficking. The country's strategic location made it ideal for consolidating Colombian cocaine production and routing it north. But Venezuela was also Iran's closest ally in the Western Hemisphere. Diplomatic relations had deepened over 2 decades. Direct flights connected Caracas to Tehran. Iranian Revolutionary Guard personnel operated openly in Venezuelan territory. Hezbollah had established a significant presence in Venezuelan society, particularly within the Lebanese immigrant community. The cocaine flowing through this network was not simply criminal commerce. It was strategic infrastructure serving Iranian interests. Intelligence estimates suggested the network moved approximately 8,000 kilograms of cocaine annually from Venezuela to the United States, street value exceeding $240 million. The Hezbollah financing component represented approximately $60 million annually flowing to terrorist operations. $60 million, enough to fund training camps, weapons procurement, operational planning for attacks across the Middle East and potentially beyond. The DEA coordinated with agencies across the national security apparatus. CIA provided intelligence on the Venezuelan and Iranian components. Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control mapped the financial networks. FBI counterterrorism units assessed domestic threat implications. The investigation expanded across 18 months. What emerged was a network of unprecedented sophistication. The cocaine originated in Colombian jungle laboratories, produced by criminal organizations with decades of experience, transported across the porous border to Venezuelan territory where government protection ensured safe passage. Military checkpoints waved vehicles through. Police patrols looked the other way. The corruption was total and systematic. The product was consolidated at warehouses near the Caribbean coast, professional facilities with climate control and security. Quality testing ensured consistent product. Packaging prepared for maritime transport. The loads were then placed onto vessels ranging from fishing boats to semi-submersible craft designed specifically for drug transport. These semi-submersibles were engineering achievements in their own right. Low profile, difficult to detect on radar, capable of carrying tons of product across hundreds of miles of open water. The maritime route crossed the Caribbean to Central American coastlines, Honduras, Guatemala, Belize. Local criminal organizations received the shipments and moved them overland through Mexico. The Mexican cartels controlled the final transit into American territory. But Hezbollah's role was not limited to financing. The organization provided operational expertise that elevated the network's capabilities. Hezbollah operatives had spent decades perfecting logistics under hostile conditions, moving weapons and personnel through conflict zones, evading surveillance by multiple intelligence services, managing financial flows across international boundaries. These skills translated directly to drug trafficking. The network employed counter-surveillance techniques developed against Israeli intelligence, communication protocols designed to defeat electronic monitoring, compartmentalization that limited damage when individual cells were compromised. The DEA was facing an adversary with state-level capabilities operating as a criminal enterprise. Here is what made this network different from traditional drug trafficking organizations. Traditional cartels are motivated by profit. They can be disrupted through financial pressure. Leadership can be incentivized to negotiate. The organization's goals are ultimately commercial. This network served multiple masters with divergent objectives. The cartels wanted money. Hezbollah wanted funding for ideological warfare. Iran wanted strategic influence in the Western Hemisphere. Venezuela wanted to undermine American interests while enriching corrupt officials. Each participant brought unique capabilities. The cartels provided smuggling infrastructure. Hezbollah provided operational expertise. Iran provided state protection and diplomatic cover. Venezuela provided territorial sanctuary. Disrupting such a network required attacking multiple nodes simultaneously. A surgical strike against any single component would simply shift the burden to others. The operation planning took 7 months. Targets were identified across 4 countries. Timing was coordinated through diplomatic channels that themselves required months of negotiation. The primary American targets included the Miami Currency Exchange and 17 associated businesses across Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Distribution cells in 12 cities, warehouses storing cocaine awaiting distribution, residences of key operational figures. Simultaneously, partner nations would execute their own operations. Colombian forces would strike at jungle laboratories. Central American authorities would interdict maritime shipments. Even limited cooperation was secured from elements within Venezuelan security services who opposed the network's activities. The financial disruption would be equally comprehensive. Treasury Department had prepared sanctions packages against 43 individuals and entities. Bank accounts would be frozen simultaneously across multiple jurisdictions. The money would stop moving at the same moment the drugs stopped flowing. 72 hours before execution, final surveillance confirmed target positions. The Miami Exchange was operating normally. Cash deposits continued daily. Wire transfers proceeded on schedule. The operators had no indication of impending action. Distribution cells across the southeastern United States held approximately 1,200 kilograms of cocaine awaiting street-level sale, street value exceeding $36 million. An additional 800 kilograms was in transit from Mexico, scheduled to arrive within days. Maritime interdiction assets had identified 3 vessels currently transporting cocaine across the Caribbean. Combined cargo estimated at 2,400 kilograms. These would be intercepted in international waters under Coast Guard authority. The network was fully loaded, maximum product in the pipeline, maximum cash in the system. The strike would achieve maximum impact. But intelligence also indicated concerning developments. Hezbollah's financial managers had begun moving unusual volumes through the Lebanese accounts, large transfers to operational accounts in Syria and Iraq. The pattern matched previous pre-operation financial positioning. Something was being planned, and the funding was coming from American cocaine purchases. The connection was direct. The threat was immediate. The operation could not wait. 0500 hours, execution began. The Miami exchange was the symbolic heart of the network. DEA tactical teams breached the business at the moment it should have been empty. Instead, they found 3 employees conducting an unusual overnight transaction. $18 million in cash stacked on counting tables, the largest single currency seizure in the operation. The employees surrendered without resistance. Their cooperation would prove valuable. Unlike cartel soldiers who faced certain death for betrayal, these financial operatives recognized that American prison was preferable to Hezbollah punishment. Across Florida, Georgia, and Texas, simultaneous raids struck distribution infrastructure. Stash houses yielded cocaine and cash, vehicles were seized, documentation was recovered. The network's American architecture was being dismantled, building by building. By 0800 hours, American operations were substantially complete. 1,400 kilograms of cocaine seized, $27 million in currency recovered, 43 individuals in custody facing federal charges. But the international components were equally critical. Colombian special forces struck 3 jungle laboratories before dawn. The facilities were destroyed. Precursor chemicals were seized. The production capacity that fed the network was eliminated, at least temporarily. In the Caribbean, Coast Guard cutters intercepted 2 of 3 identified vessels. Combined seizure, 1,800 kilograms of cocaine. The third vessel was tracked to Honduran waters, where local authorities executed the interdiction. Another 460 kilograms recovered. The maritime pipeline had been severed. Financial sanctions activated simultaneously across global banking networks. 43 designated individuals and entities found their accounts frozen. Wire transfers were blocked. The money that had been flowing freely suddenly stopped moving entirely. In Beirut, Lebanese banking authorities cooperated with selective account freezes. The political situation was delicate. Hezbollah maintained significant power within Lebanese government, but international pressure and the scale of documented criminal activity forced limited action. The network's financial infrastructure had been crippled in a single morning. Let me describe what was ultimately seized and disrupted. Cocaine seized across all operations, 4,860 kilograms, street value exceeding $145 million, lethal potential, impossible to calculate, but representing hundreds of thousands of doses that would have destroyed American lives. Currency seized, $47 million. Accounts frozen, exceeding $120 million. Total financial disruption, approaching $170 million. The human trafficking component that investigation revealed added another dimension. The network had been moving people alongside drugs, Venezuelan migrants, economic refugees, exploited as drug mules or worse. 34 trafficking victims were recovered during the raids and provided with protection and services. Subjects arrested in American operations, 43. Additional arrests by partner nations, 117. The network's operational personnel had been decimated, but the true impact was measured in what would not happen. The $60 million annually flowing to Hezbollah would not fund terrorist operations. Training camps would go unfunded. Weapons purchases would be delayed. Operational planning would be disrupted. Intelligence analysts estimated that the financial disruption would impact Hezbollah capabilities for 18 to 24 months. Not permanent damage, but meaningful delay. Time during which attacks might not occur. Time during which lives might be saved. The cocaine that would not reach American streets represented another category of prevention. Based on distribution patterns, the seizures prevented approximately 48,000 addiction episodes. Emergency room visits avoided approximately 7,200. Overdose deaths prevented approximately 480. 480 Americans who would not die because this network was disrupted. The investigation continued producing results for months after the initial operation. Cooperating witnesses provided intelligence that led to additional seizures. Network communication records revealed previously unknown cells. Financial documentation mapped connections that had been invisible. The Venezuelan component proved most resistant to permanent disruption. Government protection remained in place for trafficking operations. Officials implicated in the network faced no domestic consequences. The territorial sanctuary continued operating, merely shifting to alternative routes and partners. Iran's role was documented but beyond direct interdiction. Revolutionary Guard involvement was confirmed through intelligence channels, but state actors operating within sovereign territory could not be reached through law enforcement action. Hezbollah's financial arm adapted within months. New money transfer routes were established. Alternative banking relationships cultivated. The organization had survived decades of pressure. It would survive this as well. But the adaptation required time and resources. Every month spent rebuilding infrastructure was a month without full operational capacity. Every dollar spent on new financial architecture was a dollar not spent on weapons or training. The disruption mattered even if it was not permanent. DEA Hunter documents operations with complete honesty about their limitations. Operation Persian Gate achieved its objectives. A major narco-terrorism network was exposed and disrupted. Tons of cocaine were seized. Hundreds of millions in criminal assets were frozen. Lives were saved on multiple continents. But the conditions that created this network persist. Venezuela remains a narco-state. Iranian influence in the Western Hemisphere continues to expand. Hezbollah continues to seek funding through any means available. American cocaine demand continues to generate the revenue that funds these operations. The network will rebuild. Alternative routes will be established. New financial channels will be created. The intersection of drug trafficking and terrorism will continue because the incentives remain aligned. What can be done? Continued pressure, constant surveillance, repeated disruption, making the business more expensive, making the risks higher, making the timeline longer between operations. It is not victory in any permanent sense. It is management of a persistent threat. It is buying time. It is saving the lives that can be saved while working toward solutions that address root causes. The American cocaine user does not see where their money goes, does not know that their purchase funds terrorist training camps, does not understand that their addiction makes them complicit in violence half a world away. This connection must be understood. Drug abuse is not a victimless crime. It is not merely self-harm. It is participation in networks that span continents and fund the enemies of civilization. Every line of cocaine, every pill purchased, every dose consumed, the money flows somewhere. And increasingly, it flows to those who would destroy the societies that tolerate their trade. Operation Persian Gate severed one pipeline, exposed one network, disrupted one flow of terrorist financing. The work continues because the threat continues, because new networks emerge, because the money always finds a way, because the drugs keep moving until someone stops them. 43 arrests, 4,860 kilograms seized, $170 million disrupted, 480 lives saved, terrorist operations delayed. One operation, one moment in an endless war. What surprised you most about this investigation? The connection between American drug use and terrorist financing, the sophistication of the combined cartel Hezbollah network, or the role of state actors like Iran and Venezuela? Share your thoughts below. How should American policy address the intersection of drug trafficking and terrorism? What responsibilities do drug users bear for where their money ultimately goes? This has been DEA Hunter, Operation Persian Gate. When the drugs fund the terror, the money moved in 3 directions. We stopped it, for now. Subscribe for more operations. Share this story. Follow DEA Hunter for the investigations that protect your community and your country. The networks persist. The threats evolve. The fight continues. Stay vigilant. Stay informed. Stay alive. DEA Hunter, following the money to its darkest destinations.